Are you living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, and constantly stressed about money? Statistics show that 77% of Americans are dealing with some kind of debt. Not only that, but a 2023 study highlighted that 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, a 6% increase from the previous year. In other words, more than 3/4 of Americans struggle to save and invest after just paying for their monthly expenses. Similarly, another study showed that almost 70% of people identified as living paycheck to paycheck, or even more concerning, reporting that their income doesn't even cover their standard expenses. This is according to Forbes. Living beyond your means doesn't just affect the poor. The problem affects even those with higher incomes. The good news is that everyone, regardless of income, can break free of debt and control their finances. I spent the last decade working in the financial services industry, creating a system to help my family and my clients manage their money on autopilot. And today I'm going to show you some of my best tips to stop living above your means in a way that isn't super restrictive and decimates your entire lifestyle. Because guess what? That's not sustainable. When you're living above your means, you probably do multiple of these. And this might sting a little bit, but I believe that we need to address all of these problems head on. You spend more than you make. I get it. Maybe something happened, a job loss, you're not working to your full capacity, you've had an injury, but living above your means can only happen for so long before you are completely destitute. You prioritize short-term goals over long-term goals. For example, you might give in to the impulse by spending on clothes or gadgets or toys instead of prioritizing longer-term goals, leaving little money for things like a down payment on a house or retirement or preparing for a job change or a career change even. You don't have enough money saved for emergencies. You often struggle to cope with small car repairs or emergencies or the hot water heater breaking, things like that can really set you back instead of just being a mild inconvenience. You buy whatever appeals to you in the moment, always giving way to the impulse. You pay for most things using credit cards because you'll worry about the balance later, but that can cause a mountain of debt. You overspend to impress. I'm talking about spending more to impress a stranger. That is the definition of trying to keep up with the Joneses. I don't want to be harsh here, but this is the norm for most people, which leads to an unsustainable life. This quite literally makes you a slave to consumerism, and often a slave to an unfulfilling job that you hate because you feel like you can't leave or take the risk or afford to get fired or laid off. This is the recipe for all of your dreams to die. Unfortunately, people just assume that, well, it is what it is, or not that big of a deal, but this leads to even more consequences, like stress and anxiety. The constant worry about money can have a detrimental effect on your life and mental health. We know that money stress is the #1 cause for divorce in our country. And according to a study done by Thriving Wallet, 90% of Americans say that financial concerns impacts their stress levels. Another consequence is financial insecurity. The risk of unexpected expenses increases as you're living paycheck to paycheck. In the US, 49% of adults said they couldn't even cover a $1,000 expense from savings. However, if you manage to master your finances and live below your means, then you can eliminate a majority of financial stress, not constantly wondering when the next paycheck is going to hit. Now, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, have a lot of credit cards, and don't know how to live within your means, I'm going to show you the simple steps that you could follow now. Most people overlook this, but this is key to a much easier life. Also, I've got a bonus strategy for you at the end of this video. Let's get into it. #1 is capping lifestyle inflation. Now, you want to section off your lifestyle and put a cap on it essentially, and make sure that you only allow for incremental increases as your income grows moving forward. Save at least half of any raise or bonus or commission if at all possible, instead of just dropping that money in your checking account and hoping for the best. So let's say you get a raise. Awesome, congratulations. Your first thought might be, hey, it's time to finally buy that multi-$1,000 espresso machine that's just gonna pump the caffeine right into your veins. Hold up. Instead of going wild, let's agree on a rule. Save half of any bonus and live on the other half. That way you slowly upgrade your lifestyle without ending up right back where you started, only this time with a fancier coffee addiction. Let's say you get a $500 bonus or a commission or something like that. Instead of blowing it all on an Xbox or something, bank $250 use the other $250 for something. Maybe instead of an Xbox, you can finally buy those noise canceling headphones. That way you can dial it in at work and be extra productive during the day. Either way, you're living better and saving for your financial goals. This gives you a gradual increase in spending instead of wondering where all of your money went. Number 2 is implementing micro habits to curb impulse spending. Delay impulse purchases by just adding them to the wish list instead of the shopping cart. This gives you time to reflect on your purchase and not have to do the emotional immediate spend. If it's 2 a.m. and you're on Amazon and you finally see that Vitamix blender that's super expensive but supposedly life-changing. You're convinced you need this now because you want to start this healthy lifestyle before the new year even starts, making smoothies every day to become super healthy. But wait, instead of hitting buy, just toss that on the wish list and sleep on it. Here's what happens. By the next morning, the emotional high wears off. You probably are going to realize your current blender probably works just fine, or that you don't need another smoothie phase. The wish list hack lets you cool off and chill before spending all of your money on shit you don't need. Pro tip, if it's still on your list a month later and you still want it, at that point, consider pulling the trigger, assuming you have the available cash to do so. Number 3, create a realistic spending plan. Some personal finance people suggest, step 1 is you have to track your spending. You have to get a little notebook and write out every single purchase for 30 days before you can have the clarity to know where to cut. Guess what? That sounds awful. No one wants to actually do that. And guess what? 99% of people are going to fall off the wagon before the first week is over. Instead, you can literally just spitball how much money you need for groceries, going out to eat, household toiletries, and entertainment based on how much income you have, on how much money you make versus what your expenses are. And now we're going to send this money to a new institution, a separate checking account that we're going to designate only for spending. Here's the thing, breaking this down into a weekly amount. So figure out what you need for the month, divide by 4. This way you can much more easily stick to this. Automatically put these dollars in your new checking account each week. That way you won't have to think about it. That alone is probably the number 1 tip I can get, because this gives you predetermined boundaries and you don't have to budget, because guess what? You don't need to do a budget every week because you're probably going to buy the same amount of groceries every single week. Here and there, want to go out to eat, you're going to want to do the things you normally do, like buy deodorant or razor blades and toothpaste, and figure that stuff out. Super, super, super simple. Now, if you're still watching this video, here's the bonus strategy I talked about. You can automate your spending and savings. So basically you have separate accounts, one for bills, one for spending, and one for savings. We talked a little bit about the spending account, but basically you set up these weekly transfers at a different bank. Again, groceries, going out to eat, household toiletries, entertainment. And if you pick the right number, you should have enough to do the things you want to do. And as the number's getting low, boom, another cash infusion happens. Okay, so if you're running out of money too quick, you're probably not giving yourself enough money to begin with. Now, you should have some margin between what you're spending, what your bills are, and now you want to take the difference, the extra cash you have on paper, and immediately get that out of your checking account. Get that up into a high yield savings account and begin to build that cash cushion. Once you're a month ahead, you can start to think about savings buckets like money for Christmas or home and auto maintenance or stuff for the kids, whether it's like sports and back to school clothes and all the things that kids need. This helps you stay organized and segment your dollars to make sure your emergency money is for emergencies only, but you're giving yourself permission to spend some of those savings when you need to, whether it's for kids' clothes for back to school or because you have an actual emergency like your hot water heater breaks. Over time, you can aim to have all of your income direct deposited into that high yield savings account. Because at that point, once you're a month ahead and you don't have to do any heavy lifting at all, because if all of your income is going into this high yield savings account, this is the absolute game changer for anyone that has variable income, whether that's bonuses, commissions, you work in sales, you're 100% commission. Maybe you've got a side hustle, you get a tax return. There's so many things that happen. Did you know that for most people that get paid bi-weekly, 2 months of the year, you have 3 paychecks? All that extra money stacks up in this high yield savings account without you lifting a finger. And so all this money gets defaulted to be saved and invested instead of getting pissed away because you're not paying attention. And again, no judgment. This is what happens to 99% of everybody. And again, Automating all these processes means nothing is slipping through the cracks. You don't have to think about this. You don't have to budget. You do a little bit of math on the front side, set up a few accounts, and boom, the money is moving itself automatically. Now, I have an automation strategy that I and my clients all use, and if you want more information about that, you can check out a link that I left down in the description. Number 5, we want to focus on small, immediate wins. Stop the bleeding before you start worrying about long-term stuff. If you're in debt or things are really tight, you have to focus on these small victories first, like saving small amounts into a high-yield savings account. Do not let perfectionism get the best of you. I used to feel this way all the time. It's so easy to think, well, if I can't afford, $500 to put away a month or a pay period, then what's the point of even trying? You have to stop that thinking. You have to start small. Literally, $10 a pay period if you have to. Just do something. Again, the same is true with paying down debt. If you just need to start with the smallest credit card, do something. This prevents overwhelm. And at this stage of the game, it's more about consistency than big wins. Those will come in time. And again, whether you're saving or paying more to a credit card, just automate it. It will make it a million times easier and guarantee that it actually gets done. If you're drowning in debt, the last thing you need to be worrying about is putting 15% into your retirement. Yes, that's important, but that can come later. You have to start where you are to walk before you can run, and give yourself grace along the way. Perfectionism will only slow you down, making it so difficult to even start. Celebrate the gradual wins, like getting the automated payment set up so you don't have to worry about your bills getting paid, or just sticking to this weekly spending limit, or automating your savings. This builds confidence and prevents financial anxiety from holding you back. And lastly, recently, I was enjoying my morning coffee, going through YouTube comments, and I saw this inspiring story. I believe it can be incredibly motivating for all of us. It certainly was for me, and so I'd like to just end this video by reading this. Thank you so much for this. You just earned a new subscriber. I moved to Canada from Nigeria in 2022 for my postgraduate studies. I graduated last year, but I couldn't find a job in IT as a data analyst, so in the meantime, I settled for a factory worker position. If the going gets tough, the tough get going, making close to minimum wage. I started saving 50% of my paycheck from day one, building enough for 7 months of emergency funds, which I used to buy a Toronto Dominion Bank money market fund debt security. Then I began investing in a low-cost S&P 500 growth index in Coinbase through my TFSA and RRSP. After backtesting my data, my current projections show I'll be worth over $1.4 million in my 40s, assuming I don't get a pay raise or find a better job. I'm 26 years old, and I often see people my age driving nice cars and going on amazing vacations, which makes me wonder how they're doing it. My guess? Debt. I've had to scale back a lot in my life right now. I don't have a car and still live in my low-rent student apartment. You know that Dave Ramsey quote? Live like no one else, so later you can live like no one else. I often find myself daydreaming and planning for my 40s and 60s. Marcus Aurelius said that the 40s are when a man fully matures in his book, Meditations. I've learned about rebalancing my portfolio from growth to value for better dividends, which will be beneficial when I'm older. I've also learned about REITs, or real estate investment trust, short-term US bonds, interest rates, fixed income, and the 4% rule, as well as S blocks, though I'm not a fan of debt. I am truly not behind. Thank you again. Thanks for watching.